Ladies and gentlemen, we're very pleased to welcome our state's governor today. Jay Nixon is the 55th governor of Missouri and was reelected last November to his second term. Governor Nixon grew up in a family where public service was highly valued. His father was the mayor and a city judge in the town he grew up, just south of St. Louis. The governor's mother was the first woman to become president of the local school board. The governor has other strong connections to public education in Missouri as well. The First Lady, Jay Nixon, has taught in the Jefferson City School District, and her father, the late Hubert Wheeler, was Missouri's first Commissioner of Education. Governor Nixon has made education a priority for his administration and wants every student in Missouri to be prepared to step into a good job when they graduate. He's increased funding for training programs in Missouri's colleges and universities for in-demand fields such as healthcare, and is working with colleges and universities around the state to do everything possible to have more students earn degrees. Please join me in welcoming our governor, Jay Nixon.
Good morning. Boy, when you were right at the end of the program, it's incredible how happy people are. I can only imagine the applause when I'm done, and y'all get to get in your cars and get on back out here. Two little pieces of business before I go into what I'm going to say here. Outside, and it'll seem odd, is these 100 Missouri Miles cards, and I won't explain why. This year, Missouri was designated as the outstanding trail state in America, and now we are the finalist to be named the outstanding state parks in the country, and we've made a major effort, the First Lady and I, to get people outside, to get folks healthy, and to use our great trails. And so we have laid out a challenge. You can go to mo.gov and get on that, and we'd ask your schools and others to join with us in this challenge. We already have had over 6,000 Missourians hike over 297,000 miles in the last 6.5 weeks. Our goal is to, by the time we make that presentation at the National, to get up to 500,000 miles of Missourians, and then by the end of the year, 1 million miles by Missourians on our trails. Get fitness, get outside, help our rural economy, and so we are pressing that hard. So I'd ask you, feel free to challenge other schools, challenge yourself, and it's a good excuse to get outside. I have been consistently behind the First Lady. She's currently 12.5 miles ahead of me. But I tried to catch up one morning, but I walked 12.5 miles one morning, but little I know, while I was doing that, she was off hiking with another group of people, but that's here or there. But the second part is traveling with me today is somebody who I know you all have had a chance to interact with a lot, but continues to serve my administration incredibly well as my Senior Policy Advisor for Education, Dr. Mike Nitzel. And I would just say to each and every one of you that he has not only been invaluable to me, but to the state, and also nationally on a number of things we're doing educationally. Dr. Nitzel has been incredible. So if you're talking to Mike, you're talking to me, and I appreciate everybody's hard work with Dr. Nitzel. I want to thank Dr. Nicastro and all the educators and administrators that are here today. I appreciate this opportunity to say a few words about our shared vision for public education and the opportunities and challenges we directly face. It's important to congratulate the pioneers for education yesterday, Senator Kit Bond, Carl Fisher, Ann Gibbons, Jack Kinder, and Robert Zine Price. I want to thank them for their commitment to public education and to our great state. You all have probably heard me say this, but I think it's worth saying again and again. Here in Missouri, public education is a value, not a political position. And that is more and more and more important for us to stress in this hyper-partisan, hot environment that we live. And today, the high calling that you have chosen to accept, each and every one of you, of educating and inspiring the next generation of Missourians has never been more important. The competition for jobs of the future is global, and it will be won by the states and nations with the most skilled, most creative, quite simply, the best educated workforce. Education is quite simply the best economic development tool there is. That's why, even through tough economic times, we stayed focused on what matters. Some states responded to the downturn by making big cuts to education. In Kansas, per-student spending dropped by 13% since 2008. In Tennessee, college tuition went up by 30%. And in Texas, more than 10,000 teachers lost their jobs. All told, 25 states have cut funding for schools by more than 5% over the last 4 years. Other states reacted to budget challenges by raising taxes. In fact, a total of 40 states went this route between 2009 and 2011. Here in Missouri, we did neither. We balanced the state budget each year without reaching further into the pockets of taxpayers or gutting our funding for our schools. Instead, we make government smarter and more efficient. We cut energy use and sold off surplus property. And even during the height of the recession, we still made support for our K-12 classrooms a priority. Today, math scores are up, reading scores are up. The number of young adults with college degrees is up. And I'm proud to report that Missouri's high school graduation rate is now 8th highest in the nation. This is just the kind of excellent progress we need to keep our state moving forward. With our perfect AAA credit rating intact and our economy building up steam, we now have historic opportunities to build on this momentum and invest in our future. Through some very lean years, we've had to make some tough choices, and so have you. And today, the dividends of that responsible fiscal management should be invested in our children, because nothing will have a greater impact on the future of our state than the commitment we make right now to education. That's why, if you look back to this budget that I presented, my budget this year recommended increasing funding for education and increasing it by $150 million. Funding to expand access to early childhood education so that more children start kindergarten ready to learn in school and succeed in life. Funding to take our A-plus schools program statewide so that every student who works hard, plays by the rules, and gives back to their community can attend community college tuition free. Funding to reward our colleges and universities for preparing students for high-demand fields as efficiently and effectively as possible. And $100 million in additional funding for our K-12 classrooms to train more teachers, modernize equipment, and lengthen the school year. These are smart investments that will yield big returns for our students, our schools, and our economy. And you know what? We're just getting started. By continuing on the steady, responsible course we've set, there is so much more that we can do. But folks, I'm at, right now, one reckless experiment, cooked up, in my opinion, by a few special interests, bankrolled by one very wealthy individual, threatens to take us irretrievably off course. I'm talking about House Bill 253. With a price tag of more than $800 million annually, House Bill 253 would undermine our ability to support public education in Missouri now and for years to come. To put that number in context, that's the equivalent of closing all of our prisons, or cutting all funding for our colleges and universities, or shutting down the entire Department of Mental Health. With reductions of this magnitude, almost all public services would be affected. But the impact on our K-12 schools would be among the most devastating. To give you a sense for the severity of the cuts this bill would require, even if we take the General Assembly's own assumptions, and quite frankly, I don't think all of them had a chance to read it and take in the full effect of the bill. I'll talk about that in a minute. But even if we take their fiscal assumptions, annual funding for K-12 classrooms could see a reduction of $260 million a year each and every year. Right here in Columbia schools, that could be a reduction of at least $4 million a year and more than $7 million a year if the Federal Marketplace Fairness Act becomes law. For those that have questions about that, the Federal Marketplace Act, that's the internet sales tax piece, that has already passed the United States Senate with 69 votes. It's one vote away from the House and pass it. If it passes, this automatically kicks in significant issues here, as well as about $900 million in refunds that would be owed. These are cuts that the schools don't deserve and cannot afford. Now, supporters of House Bill 253 talk about safeguards that will prevent tax cuts from taking effect unless revenues grow by a certain amount. Unfortunately, that's just not the case. The truth is, special breaks for certain kinds of businesses are conveniently exempt from these so-called safeguards that would kick in immediately, a costly loophole worth $260 million a year. For example, that pass-through income piece, $260 million a year, exempt from any trigger. That's the specific break that helps lobbyists and lawyers. Even in the cases where limited protections do exist, they are virtually meaningless. Under this bill, tax cuts, they say they have a trigger. Folks, under this bill, their trigger, they say, well, we have to have income before it would kick. It would have taken effect. The trigger would have not been stopped anything in 2009 during the depths of the economic recession when revenues plummeted by more than $500 million. That is not a safety trigger. That's why just last week, all three leading independent rating agencies raised concerns about the impact of House Bill 253, suggesting the bill could jeopardize our perfect AAA credit rating. Such a downgrade would raise our borrowing costs significantly in school districts across our state. I know my budget director, Linda Lubering, went through the details with you earlier, including many of the other flaws and unintended consequences of the bill. But what they really boil down to is this, really quite simply. If you take all of the issues, members of the General Assembly can either support House Bill 253 or they can support public education. But you cannot do both. So you might be wondering why they're so determined to pass the bill. If it's this expensive, someone must be making out pretty well. You know, what's pushing it? You're right, but there are some people would make out well under this bill. But it isn't you or me or probably anybody in this room. It's not factory workers or farmers, engineers or electricians, school teachers or security guards. These tax breaks for what's called pass-through business income primarily benefit lobbyists, law firms, and other corporate partnerships, not to mention the creative accountants who do their taxes. Under this bill, a lobbyist with $500,000 in business income can claim an exemption worth $2,400, while a family making $48,000 a year gets about $6. So here's the trade-off. Fewer teachers, higher tuition, and larger class sizes in exchange for what amounts to a couple of pairs of socks. It's not fair. It's not right. We know that the way to continue improving our schools is by supporting them, not attacking them. We believe in a public education system in which all are welcome, where a child of want and a child of wealth enter as equals. We believe that schools should be supported and valued by the community, not one party or another. We believe that teachers deserve to be rewarded for the challenging and important work that they do. But I'm here to tell you, not everyone agrees. Together, we've fought efforts by these special interests to attack our schools, and we've won. When they tried to funnel money from public education to private prep schools with vouchers, you stood up and we won. When they tried to undermine local control, you spoke out. And when they came after teachers, you fought back. Today, these ideologues are armed with a new and much more dangerous weapon. House Bill 253 would starve our public schools of the basic support they need to educate our kids now and for the years to come, draining billions of dollars away from our schools over the next decade. Such an attack is unprecedented. Its effects would be permanent, and it must be stopped. You know, I've been around the state a few times for a lot of years. I've yet to see anyone running for office to come to Jeff City to say, my plank is I will come to Jeff City, I will work hard, and what I will do is I will take money away from local public schools, and then I ask you to reelect me, okay? That's what they're doing here, okay? That we should not, no one should, suffer under the false assumption that it's anything else than that. I think that folks run for office to try to support public schools, and they should. And while this won't be the last time that we have to defend the values that we share, this is the ground that we must fight. This is the battle we must win. Because this is a moment we'll look back on as defining our future or sealing our fate. To me, the choice is very clear. Missouri should always be a place where we commit to raising our goals higher and helping our students dream bigger, where we train our workforce to innovate and invent, where we protect the shared priorities that make our state a great place to live, work, and raise a family. The choice before us is stark, and the stakes are high. And you know, one of the other things I've talked about this bill is I am not, the last couple of weeks of the legislative session get very busy. I serve in the Senate, and I know you don't really, quite frankly, have time to review everything and get into every detail. And I think that is that there are significant, not only policy implications of this, but significant mistakes in this bill. Two of those jump out very clearly. The unintended $200 million tax increase on all prescription drugs in the state of Missouri. We're going to build an economy of the future by cutting education, taxing senior citizens for their drugs, and oh, by the way, also closing a loophole for taxation for college students' books so we can make college more expensive at the same time. I don't think a lot of these folks knew exactly what was in this bill, okay? But my point to them has been very clear. I'll give you that. You didn't know what was in it, fine. If you do something where you don't know what's in it by one time, that's an excuse. If you come back and vote to override me, you lose the ability to say you don't know what you're doing. You lose the ability to say, hey, I didn't know what was in there. And so it is really incumbent upon us to be respectful of these members that are very busy and it's a very difficult time. But to point out, I mean, I told Dr. Castro this morning, one of the great advantages of this job is you get to see the state from a pretty high vista, where you get a lot of information and you're able to see trend lines and you're able to see the forces that move, the broader forces, while at the same time visiting with lots of folks locally and all that sort of stuff. But in the big picture forces, if at this time with this economy, as we're making progress, I mean, folks, over the last 3 months, we've added 13,000 jobs, 4,600 jobs, and 12,000 jobs. Our unemployment rate has been below the national average for 46 months in a row. We're beginning to see the gains that could benefit us by supporting in the long-term strategies that will make a real difference while at the same time holding the line on taxes. I mean, we're in that time frame right now where we should be investing in the future because of the way that we have acted over the last 4 years, making the difficult calls, preparing ourselves for when times get better, taking a portion of that and making longer-term investments, and education is the most important of those longer-term investments. So the choice before us is stark, and the stakes are really high. So I'd ask each of you to take the opportunity to communicate respectively with your representatives and senators, many of whom did not read or fully understand the provisions of this bill or the impact. Tell them that increasing class sizes in order to cut taxes on lobbyists will not strengthen our economy. Tell them that hiking tuition in order to create more loopholes for corporations will not create jobs. Tell them that your school and opportunities for your students are worth more than a pair of socks. I would also encourage you to take this issue to your boards, many of which have already adopted resolutions opposing House Bill 253 and calling on the legislature to sustain my veto. Now, they may have on the other side millions of special interest dollars to put on TV, but we are 6 million strong. Finally, I want to thank each of you for your commitment and dedication to public education. You have answered a call to make our communities and our state stronger and more prosperous for generations to come. We value that contribution, and thank you for that tireless commitment. So, in conclusion, I am confident that if we're able to weather this short-term thing, hold this veto, and then work together, that we will have additional resources to make the investments that will make a real difference. If we don't, if the politics of the day overwhelm the value we share, it will have happened at a time when we were on the battlefield. These moments happen time after time after time. This is not taking $850 million out of a general revenue budget forever is not reversible. This is that time. So I ask each of you to communicate respectfully with your legislators. I've sent clear signals. I'm certainly willing to work with them on anything, but this is not the time. Together, our joined responsibility is to respect the mission of public education, respect the people that take education as a career, not think that we are going to, with a simple stroke of the pen or a soundbite, undermine the foundation of the past and the foundation of the future of our state, which is public education. Together, We will continue to build a brighter and more prosperous future for our students and our state. Together, we'll show respect, we'll show support, but most importantly, when attacked, when folks come at us, we will show togetherness and unanimity and speak in a single voice that the kids should not be shortchanged by short-term political thinking, that our state should not be moved backwards because somebody wants to invest a few of their millions in TV ads, and that people that go to Jeff City to represent each of your districts have a responsibility to go to Jeff City and to fight to bring back to you, while holding our fiscal discipline, enough resources to do your job. That's their job, that's our job. Together, we'll make sure that we can continue to move this state forward. Thank you for all you do.